Hello everyone, John Doyle from OptixEQ and another video race of the day. It's Monday. It's March 7th, and I'm going to look at Santa Anita. So it's kind of a special day. They're running on a Monday, but really the point of this video though is a little bit more educational too. I'm trying to show you how to use notes and why notes is important in handicapping races. When you look at the plot here, a couple of things stand out. It's a maiden special weight. So the first thing that stands out is that very hard to distinguish. There's like 3 horses, 4 horses, maybe even 5 horses that look pretty good on the plot, 1, 2, 5, 6 on the standard. But when you flip over the surface of distance, you see a bunch of horses not being able to plot. So these are horses trying the distance and or the surface for the first time. And you also see a lot of these horses don't have established run styles being maidens. So you really need to rely on something other than the plot to try to help you handicap this race. And that's where the notes comes in so valuable. So I'm going to flip over to the grid. And the first thing I'm going to show you is what the grid looks like without notes in it. And you just could kind of go through this, and you could, people do it every day. They use this, speed figures and so forth. And you could do speed figures. You could use speed figures for form cycle analysis. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not comprehensive. You're not getting additional information. And you also could use, the notes that are in the form, the short comments, but again, it's just, their intent is really not so much as to describe what happened. What we're trying to do with notes is really interpret the horse's race and then maybe project where that puts that horse in its form cycle. So it's invaluable information. It's very unique to us, and we developed a key word system around it, so we can really kind of point you in the direction. But overall, it's a very valuable thing if you're trying to handicap outside what most people look at. So look at first, the first horse. So now I'm going to turn on notes, right? Because so let me just turn it on here. Okay, so now we have notes. Thanks. I'm going to start with the horse number 1, Annie's Song. And what I'm going to try to do with this, I'm going to show you. I'm not going to get into horse by horse, but I'm going to point out a couple of horses where I think the notes help me kind of tell that the horse may be better than he looks. And in other cases where the horse may not be as good as he looks. Okay, so I'm going to start with the number 1. And Annie's Song, they kind of shipped her in from Europe. She was sprinting there, first time at 8 furlongs, and she ran. She was a little wide, but she ran a pretty good race, third. And you can notice she's having a lot of seconds and thirds on her form. I don't know what that really means, but she started. 4 straight sprints in Europe. And usually they can go a little bit longer when they come to the States, but kind of got her as a kind of a shorter distance kind of horse. And you notice the comment that Notes brings out. Now, you wouldn't have this again. It would be wide and 1 turn. What does 1 turn mean? It means the horse is probably preferable around 1 turn. Most of these turf races, in the US at 8 furlongs are going to be 2 turns. Maybe, no, they all are, I think, pretty much. Maybe Belmont is the exception, and so is Woodbine. So they kind of listened to our note, and the second time she ran sprinting. She ran a good race. It actually improved performance. Okay, so you're saying, okay, there you go. That's probably going to keep her sprinting, especially the fact that you can see she kind of faded in the stretch a little bit there. Okay, she was first at the top of the stretch and third at the end. Now, she runs another good figure. And again, if you just have figures, you're saying to yourself, oh, she's at 87. She kind of towers over a lot of these horses. But again, the comment shorter. She had no cover. And notice the word blanket in this race. Again, it gives us information we're not getting, if we're just looking at this race without notes. The blanket tells us that the horses were coming together at the end of the race. Typically, that's not a good sign for a quality of race. That means it's, all the horses kind of are just falling together at the end. Probably the race is dressed up a little bit. So the 87 figure might be a little bit, take with a grain of salt. And you wouldn't be able to do that without notes. So here's a horse, 7 to 2 in the morning line. It's going to get money. Can knock this horse, second and third many times, but maybe not the right distance, and maybe a little dressed up in that last one. So that's a horse I would probably downgrade, especially at 7 to 2 below. But it just shows you, again, going the extra step with notes, how things kind of lay out. And I just wanted to point out the other thing about this horse. If you looked at this horse's, let me just pull it up here. Look at this horse's comment in the last race. You don't get any of that blanket or shorter, right? It just said any song was 2-3 wide, rally, not enough. Okay. And the information is okay. I mean, I'm not knocking it. It's just it's different purpose than notes. Notes is trying to interpret and try to give you a little bit more of a story, kind of like Cliff Notes. When I was a kid, I used to read the Cliff Notes to read the book, and they used to interpret it. It was actually very good. Actually, it was a good thing to do both. So in this case, that's what Notes has given us. It's kind of our version of the Cliff Notes. Okay, I'm going to go to number 2 because this horse was, I thought, interesting. Eleuthera, and this horse kind of started out first race going along better than looked effort as a 2-year-old. So that was a good performance in his debut. Then they've sprinted on dirt. Obviously, that's not what this horse wanted. So the projection go back to turf. They did, but it didn't go until like 114 days later. You notice this horse. I mean, they had a lot of confidence in this horse. They put him in a stakes, put her in a stakes race the second time out. She put her back with maidens. She ran a good race, kind of got an easy lead. But notice the comment again, prep. Now, again, getting a lot more information than you normally would get. And notice that there's no bar here, no square. That means she was in open company. So this is kind of a state bred race that she was running in. So this one was open, more difficult. So they say, hey, let's get her back with state bred. But they put her in a stakes race. And again, if you look at a run line, looks like she, was pressing and was being pressed and then faded. And that would all you would see in a run line. But look at what Notes gives us. It says best of speed. That means this horse was in a speed duel and was the best of one, and she was against the flow. So that's a big deal, okay, especially in a stakes race. I wanted to go back and look at that race. So what I did was I pulled this race up, just filtered on this, and I noticed if you just look at this race, you could see this race really favored horses coming from off the pace. Look at all the horses that finished first, second. They came from the clouds. So you could tell the pace pressure was enormous in this race. And Eleuthera was the best of the speed, right? Because look where the other speed finished, Professor's Pride. And if you notice, like the next out of this race, the horses just fared fairly well. Again, one horse broke his maiden. Another one won an optional claimer. Another one finished 4th in a grade 3. So this race had some oomph to it. She was best of the speed. So I think there's a very good reason why to say that she's a lot better than her past performances look in this race. Okay, so she was one of the ones plotted as a square in quadrant 1 too. So give her an extra look, Eleuthera, and she does get Lasix for the first time. So maybe there's even a possibility she bled in the race last time. I gave her a little time. I think her works look good if I remember correctly. So Eleuthera looks like a horse that I would upgrade based on the form, again, using Notes. Another one I would upgrade, and this one's a little bit more obvious, maybe obvious to also to people watching races. Exit Soul. This is a horse that ran well in her debut on a good track at Santa Anita, came back and then ran an improved number despite having tremendous trouble, right? Trouble plus, closed, gallop out, horse ran 82 and gets an EX label from us. What that means is you get excused that race. I love when a horse actually improves their figures and gets an excuse in that race. This horse is definitely projecting to do a lot better in this race numbers wise, and that's great because she fits the range, makes a big rider change back to original rider John Velasquez, who's riding well. This horse is well meant, should be well meant in this race, and another horse that's an obvious contender and stronger just based on looking at the notes, right, and just looking at her numbers. The last horse I want to kind of leave you with, this one's a little bit more of a stretch, but again, if you got notes, it kind of enlightens you to some things. Now, if you look at this horse, she did get a C sprinting the first time, but look at the comments, right? So she didn't handle the track. She had a close in this race, even though she, was finished 7th, beaten 9 lengths. And look at the projection, stretch, and this race was a prep. So, I mean, she's got to improve big time, but horses do improve sometimes dramatically from first to second start. And she might be the one. Let's look at the extended comment. It's always important when you see a lot of keywords on a horse to make sure you look at the extended comment. She did not handle the crossover. So it wasn't that she didn't handle the turf. She didn't handle the crossover. This was one of these races that go down the hill and they cross over, patch of grass to dirt, back to dirt to turf. She didn't handle that. A lot of horses don't analyze, especially the first time. And then we have this comment that it was a sneaky close. So this is a horse that's definitely going to fly on the radar. It's 20 to 1. You got a very competent trainer there in Baltus. There's a horse to look at in this race. Again, I wouldn't arrive at this horse without the notes. So to me, downgrading the 1 in this race, and then upgrading horses like the 2, the 4, and the 6, just based on the notes alone, really paints a different picture when you're trying to handicap a race. So I hope that was helpful. And like I said, you got to use these notes. You got to feel confident with them, and you got to trust it. The information is good, and I've always told the team, trust the data. You know, you're doing it, you do it right, trust it. In the long run, it's going to be beneficial. So that's it for me. If you like this video and others like you want us to keep doing them, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's a little red button on the right, and then just check us out on our website, OptixEQ.com. And the one other thing I want to leave you with before I jump off this is if you want some more information on notes, I really got to recommend our documentation. It's second to none. You go to info, you scroll down, you go to notes, and you got a user's guide, you got a quick reference guide, FAQs, keywords, everything you want in terms of documentation is there. So check it out. Okay. Thanks a lot for listening. It's John Doyle from OptixEQ.